Hello, my good friends. A long time no see. I imagine some of you don't recognize me so well. I have lost a lot of weight and a lot of my beard as well. But nevertheless, the treatment is going well, and things are on the up and up. Hopefully, we're back to full strength soon, and we will continue the classes as usual. I know that today is not one of the days on which I usually give a class, but you'll soon find out why. I am actually giving this class, but not inviting anybody, just recording it, and I will post it on YouTube, where you'll probably see it. The reason for the class is that today is the Hillula, or the Yortzeit in Yiddish, the day of the passing of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the famous Kabbalist from Tzfat, who passed away in 1572. That's 450 years ago. He is what is called by most the father of modern Kabbalah. He was preceded certainly by the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, also from the city of Tzfat. That's where he lived. But the teachings of Rabbi Cordovero are actually, in a sense, a summation of what came before, primarily from the Zohar, but from other Kabbalistic works, and he sort of summarizes it, collates it, puts it all together, and makes it into a very organized system. However, along came the Arizal, and he introduced some completely new ideas, which we will explore shortly. Now, the passing of a great tzaddik like the Arizal is called by the sages a Hillula. Hillula, like the Hillula of the Rashbi, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was with the Zohar, and its prime motivator when he passed away on the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer. That's called Hillula the Rashbi, the Hillula, the passing of the Rashbi. But really the word Hillula doesn't mean passing. Really, Hillula means a celebration or the party. Now you might want to ask why it is that when a great sage, a great tzaddik, a great righteous person, a saintly person passes on, why this is a celebration, why this is a party. And we will soon find out what the reason for this is. The truth is that the word Hillula is related to the word Behilo. Let me just share my screen here, and I will show you. Oh, 1 second, sorry. I will show you what this is all about. The word Hillula, Hillula in Hebrew, comes from the verse in Job 29:3. Behilo neiro alei roshi le'ore elech choshech. So his candle shines upon my head. Who's his candle? His candle is God's candle. Shines upon my head. By its light I walk, even in darkness. That is what Job said. So the word Behilo is the origin or one of the roots of the word Hillula. In other words, the time of a Hillula is the time of a light shining down from above. That's what the passing of a great tzaddik, of a great saint, when he passes away, so there's a tremendous amount of illumination that descends upon the world. Again, from the word behilo, his candle shines upon my head so I can even walk in darkness. And this is also, obviously we know that the idea of a soul in general is the idea of a candle. As we know, learn from the verse in Proverbs, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, God's candle is man's soul. All right, God's candle, that's all we need to know this verse for now. This is Proverbs 20:27, Mishlei Chov Pasuk of Zion. God's candle is man's soul. So in other words, what illuminates the world is man's soul. From below, there's an illumination from above, but that illumination, when it finds a proper vessel, so to speak, a proper vehicle or means by which to illuminate the world, then the soul also has this function of illuminating the world, and that is called God's candle. So God's candle is man's soul. And in fact, that's the purpose, essentially, of the soul descending down below in order to light up the world. All of us have this function, this task, this privilege, essentially, of lighting up the world. Unfortunately, there are many people that come into the world and exude darkness. They increase the darkness of the world rather than the light of the world. And by the way, I hear some of you asking me, where am I? I'm actually at my daughter's apartment in New York for further treatment. And I'll be staying here until the end of the summer, and then we're moving to Florida. I hope those of you who live in Florida, I hope to meet you personally, and we'll see you over there. In any event, we discussed the idea of a Hillula being a celebration. Now, what is it that we're really celebrating when a tzaddik passes on? We're celebrating his ability to shine the lights from above without the restrictions of the physical world, without the restrictions of the physical body. So one of the great ideas behind this is that all of us have the ability to illuminate, but tzaddikim have this ability to illuminate all of their followers, and even those who are not their followers, to illuminate the world from above. And that's why it's a Hillula. This is a time when we receive light from above, from the soul of the tzaddik, which is called the candle of God, as we explained already. Okay, so let's just look into the teaching of the Arizal as opposed to the teaching of the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who preceded him. They both lived in the same place. Ari was very young, or he was younger, certainly, when Rabbi Moshe Cordovero passed away. And the Ari himself passed away at the age of 39. He was a very, very young man. When he passed away, he managed to accomplish what he accomplished in very few years, which is quite remarkable. I mean, his command of Torah, particularly Pnimius Torah, the inner dimension of the divine teachings, was incredible, unbelievable. And he also introduced a new concept in Kabbalah. The truth is that this concept was already implicit in the Zohar, but he was the one to bring it out and explain it and flesh it out to a much greater degree. And let me explain what I mean. When the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, his predecessor, speaks about Kabbalistic concepts, so generally the Kabbalistic concepts that he speaks about are the Sfirot, the divine emanations, and the worlds, the four worlds, essentially four worlds. The world of the lowest world, the world of Asiya, then the world of Yetzirah, the next world up, the world of Bria, and the world of Atzilut. The world of Atzilut is the world of closeness. When I say world, the word world in Hebrew is olam, which comes from the word he'elem. He'elem means concealment. Any world is a concealment of godliness, but it depends to what degree the concealment exists. As far as the world of Atzilut is concerned, the concealment is really minimal. Whereas in the world of Asiya, the lowest world, the concealment is maximal. And in other words, it's almost completely concealed. There's just a faint sort of shadow of the light, of the divine light through which the worlds were created. I don't want to get into the whole thing now because it's far too complicated for a short class, and the class is celebrating the Arizal. In any event, the teachings of the Ramak discuss this whole idea of the descent of the light from above to below through the various divine emanations, the Sfirot, and through the various worlds, and that is called the chaining down of the divine light, or in Hebrew, Hishtalshalut. Hishtalshalut means, well, it's really developmental, but it's developmental in a sort of in a negative sense. It goes from larger to smaller rather than from smaller to larger. It goes from tremendous revelation in the world of Atzilut to minimal revelation in the world of Asiyah, the lowest of the world. But that's called Ishtalshalut from the word in Hebrew, from the Hebrew word related to Shalshelet. Shalshelet is a chain. It's the chaining down of being, or the chaining down of divine revelation to lower and lower levels, getting less and less and more attenuated as it continues. The Arizal, although he adopts this system, expands upon the system, and he speaks about something called hitlavshut. Hitlavshut really means enclosement, but really what it's all about is the idea of the interactions of the Sfirot. And not only interactions of the Sfirot amongst themselves, but interactions of the Sfirot as clusters. In other words, not just necessarily one Sfirah with another Sfirah. Each Sfirah in and of itself is subdivided into all of the 10 Sfirot. So, for example, the Sfirah of Chokhmah, the first imminent Sfirah. So the Sfirah of Chokhmah has actually 10 levels within it. There's Keter of Chokhmah, there's Chokhmah of Chokhmah, Bina of Chokhmah, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut of Chokhmah. And the same thing with Bina. Keter of Bina and Chokhmah of Bina, Bina of Bina, and so on, all the way through to Malchut of Bina. Now, what's the interaction between Chokhmah and Bina? How do they interact? At what level do they interact? Do they interact through, let's say, the level of Yesod? Do they interact through the level of Chokhmah? Do they interact through the level of Chesed? How exactly does it work? And this is one of the things that the Arizal explained and sort of illustrated through various examples of the sort of, let's call it the social aspect of the Sfirot, how they, although that's probably the wrong word, but how they interact and how they relate to one another. So whereas the Ramak spoke only about the development or the downward development of the Sfirot and the world, the Arizal speaks about the interaction, about the effect of one Sfirah on another and their partnerships in most cases, and what it is that we're supposed to be doing in order to unite the Sfirot. Because the primary goal, obviously, is to unite the Sfirot. Our primary goal being, in the time that we live, is to unite the Sfirot of Zer Anpin and Malchut, or rather the Partzufim, what's called the Partzufim, the visages. In other words, the cluster of Sfirot are called Zer Anpin. Zer Anpin is essentially the Sfirot from Chesed to Yesod. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. They form a single cluster which has all of the Sfirot. That's Chokhmah, Bina, etc., etc. The main Sfirot that join together are from Chesed to Yesod, and that connects to Malchut. It interacts with Malchut. And when those two interact and they become one partnership, so to speak, let's compare it to a marriage. When there's a happy marriage, then things are very productive. And the end result is that the light is generated further, just like it would be when a husband and wife have children. Their genes, their DNA, whatever, is generated further. Okay, so that's the big chidush of the Arizal, that he spoke about these interactions. Now, one of the verses that speaks about this is a verse in Psalms, right at the end of Psalms, in Psalm 150, verse 6. Let me just share it with you on the screen. I think you'll be able to see it. And here, Kol HaNeshama Tahalel Ya Hallelujah. The entire soul, or according to some translations, every soul, praises God. The word Tahalel is usually translated as praises, but we explained before that the word Tahalel is already related to the idea of Behilo. Behilo means to shine. So the entire soul shines with godliness. Not praises God, but shines with godliness. Now, how does this happen? So the Zohar explains that there's a concept called itaruta de la tata, itaruta de la ela. Itarula de la tata, itarula de la ela. What that means is itaruta de la tata means arousal from below, awakening from below. And itaruta de la ela, awakening or enlightenment from above. Now, what does this mean? Essentially, when a person does what he's supposed to do, he does his work. He works hard on elevating himself, on elevating the world around him, on illuminating himself, on illuminating the world around him, and illuminating those that are close to him, those people that are close to him, etc. Then he earns, because things are not given for free in this world, one has to earn them. They are given as a reward, so to speak, or it's not so much a reward. Reward is not the way to think of it so much. It's more that that's the goal that the soul was placed here for. The soul was placed here in order to make a dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place, in other words, a place for the revelation of godliness, to build the temple, so to speak, in spirituality, even in physicality, to build the temple down below for the revelation of godliness. So the initial thrust has to come from man. He has to do something. As it says right at the beginning of creation, Asher bara Elokim la'asot. God made the world to do, not just to be, but to do. In other words, we have to do things. We have to do what is necessary in order to bring the divine revelation into the world. That is our function, that's our task, that's why we're here. That's why we were put here in the first place, that's why we were created. Now, this verse, Kol HaNeshama Tahalel Ka, all souls, or the entire soul, is illuminated with godliness. How does it become illuminated with godliness? It first seeks out the light in everything, and then it's doused or flooded with light from above. Again, this is called in the Zohar itaruta l'tata, the arousal from below, and then the response itaruta l'ela, the response from above, when the soul is flooded with light from above. To the extent that as it says about Moses, when Moses came down from the mountain the second time, when he came down from the mountain after the sin of the golden calf and so on, and he came down with the new tablets of stone after having pleaded for mercy for the Jewish people, or at least those people that wasn't the entire people, but those that built and served, worshipped, whatever you want to call it, the golden calf. I mean, it was primarily, according to our sages, it was people that had come out from Egypt with the Jewish people that weren't actually part of the Jewish people, but they were accepted by Moses as into the house of Israel. They were accepted as converts and so on and so forth, and they went wrong. Be that as it may, when Moses came down with when he got the tablets the second time, the tablets of the Ten Commandments, the Luchot HaBrit, as they call the tablets of the covenant, or covenantal tablets, if you like. So when he came down the second time, it says that his face was shining to the extent that they couldn't even look him in the face. He had to cover his face. Karne hod, right? He had these rays of glory exuding from his face. Karan or panav, his face was shining, the skin of his face was shining. And if you see anybody whose face shines like that, you should know that that person is likely a person of high spiritual achievement. And that is the soul, so to speak, shining through. Again, this word behilo, to shine through, to illuminate, to the extent that it illuminates the face itself. Now, there are 3 times that this verse appears in the morning prayers. While I'm about it, I appreciate and would like to thank all of those who keep me in their prayers and have had me in their thoughts and so on and so forth. Much appreciated. Obviously, it's working and things are improving, as I mentioned. In any event, this is mentioned 3 times. Why 3 times? Well, the reason for it is as follows, essentially. Just stop sharing so I can explain this a little bit better. The reason for mentioning that verse 3 times is as follows. Although we say that there's arousal from below, awakening from below causes the response from above, how does a person get the power? Where does it come from that a person is endowed with the ability to even arouse divine illumination from above? How's that even possible? Where does it come from? So the first time this verse is mentioned, which is before, for those of you who know the prayer book, the Jewish prayer book, the Siddur, this is mentioned before Baruch She'omar. Before the Baruch She'omar prayer, we say Kol Neshama Tahaleya Hallelujah, and that is explained as the ability that is given to the soul to be able to do its work later on. Therefore, later on in the prayers, when we're actually in the middle of the prayers, before Vayavarech David, then we say this verse again twice. Kol neshama tahalel, ya hallelujah. Kol neshama tahalel, ya hallelujah. All souls, or the entire soul, is illuminated with godliness. The first time we say it is the giving of the power to be able to arouse godliness, to be able to awaken. The second time it says it is the awakening. And the third time it says it is the response. So let's go back to the verse for a minute and we can explain it slightly differently than we explained it before. When we said the entire soul praises God, what we mean is the entire soul illuminates to the extent that it can, and then becomes illuminated from above, becomes illuminated to a much greater degree from above. In other words, the soul down below seeks out godliness. How does it get this power? Because it's endowed with this power from the beginning. That's the first time the verse appears in the prayers. Later on, when we talk about, when we repeat the verse twice, one time after the other, the first repetition is what is expected of us, that we have to illuminate godliness in the world. In other words, bring godliness into our lives, into the world, to see the godliness in everything around us, to see the godliness in those around us. And then we have the ability, we have the privilege, the reward the privilege of the divine light shining down upon us, to the extent that it can even illuminate the skin of the face, illuminate a person's walking around in a glow. And that's what the halo also comes from the same word, behilo. That's what the halo is supposed to portray, the shining of the face, the saintliness that shines through. Now, the Arizal was, when he passed on, he had illuminated the world to such an extent, he had illuminated people's lives to such an extent that the day of his passing is called the Hillula. In other words, the day on which this illumination comes down from above. And that is why we celebrate his passing. We don't celebrate the fact that he passed, but we celebrate what he achieved in his life, and therefore what is expected of us to attempt to do. There's much more to be said about this, like the word kol haneshama, all, that hints to the word, to keter, and there's two levels in keter. I don't want to go into it now because it's a complicated subject, but I will perhaps do this in the future. So this is just a short class in honor of the Arizal, and may we all benefit from his teachings, and may we all at least attempt to live out his teachings in the real world by illuminating ourselves and those around us and the world in general. Okay, I much appreciate your joining me, and we will see each other again soon. Probably in another couple of weeks, I'll start giving classes again, maybe a little bit longer than that. We'll see. All the best, and see you next time.